Please be seated. So first item on the agenda is item number 283. It's two appointments to the Burlington Housing Authority, well, one to a tenant member and then a board of directors member. Mr. Denizio, let's see. Did you want to chime in at all, or?
No, none of this one.
Okay. So we have two, a tenant member for appointment would be Marion Barron, and the board of director member would be Chris Hartling. Just for point of order, due to Mass General laws, the second, do both require a roll call vote or just Mr. Hartling's?
Both.
Both, all right, so both of these appointments require a roll call vote, and only simple majority needs to be met. And this is a joint meeting between the select board and the Burlington Housing Authority. For the record, just want to introduce yourself, starting with Mr. Howard.
Dick Howard.
That guy next to you?
Al Fabe, Chairman.
Samantha Haggerty, Executive Director.
Thank you.
And Brian Curtin, board member.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot
Oh.
about this idea.
Thanks for that curveball, Brian, you're way over there. All right, so with regards to the recommendation, Marion Barron, do we discuss this individually?
Yes.
Or? Okay. Yeah. All right, so why don't we start, any discussion, we'll start with Mr. Howard.
No discussion. We already interviewed all the applicants.
Mr. Fay.
No questions.
No, thank you.
All right, I'll start with Mr. Hogan, any
No.
questions?
Nope.
Mr. Priest?
No.
Mr. Morandi?
No questions.
Mr. Runyon?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Chairman. I think Mrs. Barron's an excellent choice for that seat. They've been in Burlington forever, the Barron family, and I think it's a great choice, and certainly make that motion to appoint Mrs. Barron.
Okay, do I have a second in between the combined board? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, I'm gonna start, it's a roll call vote, and I'm gonna start with the Housing Authority. Mr. Howard?
I'm in favor.
Fay?
Favor.
In favor.
Mr. Hogan? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes,
Crick.
in favor.
You keep,
That's okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
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 yes, unanimous. It is 9-0 in favor. Congratulations. We don't need to waive any period, 15-day period, do we?
Not for a board appointment.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Mrs. Barron. Okay, the next appointment is for Mr. Chris Hartling. I don't believe he's here, is he? He's on WebEx. Chris, you there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great.
Again, what we'll do is we'll just repeat the same process with regards to Mr. Hartling. I'll start with Mr. Howard. Any comments?
No comment.
Fay?
No comment.
Sorry, forget you.
Samantha, no comment.
Welcome, Mr. Kurt.
My only comment would be that I think Chris is a great candidate. He has a lot of town experience, being a member of the Board of Selectmen previously, town meeting member, and he was on the Council of Aging for over 2 years, so I think he comes highly recommended for this position.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Kurt. Mr. Hogan?
I agree.
Priest?
No questions.
Mr. Morandi?
I don't know what I should say about Chris. No comments.
Mr. Runyon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly agree with Mr. Curtin, and I know Chris's background working with seniors has been quite extensive, and I think he'll be a great fit for the Burlington Housing Authority.
Thank you. I concur with you and Mr. Curtin. Also, from what I've seen over Mr. Hartling over the years, not only does he have the requirements, but he's got the heart for this position. His heart is in it. So with that, I'll be looking for motion for Mr. Hartling for Housing Authority as a Board of Director member.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Morandi's made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded. We're gonna do a roll call vote. This time start with Mr. Howard.
I approve.
Mr. Fay.
Approve.
Samantha.
Approve.
Mr. Curtin.
Yes, in favor.
Mr. Hogan.
Yes. Yes.
Priest. Mr. Morandi.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Runyon.
Yes.
And the chair is a yes. 9-0. Congratulations, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome.
And that is it with the Housing Authority. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank
It's about a 4-hour minimum.
Okay, item 284 is a presentation, and Mr. Morandi is going to handle the presentation on this one. Right? Okay. Thought he was taking off. John, is it in there?
Yeah,
All right. Oh, all right.
it's because we didn't want to have to carry.
Okay.
Grab the grandchild and sit, why don't you give it to all of them? How's that?
I don't think I'm ready for that rocking chair.
We'll be the judge
I
of
don't know
that.
who you asked.
You will use it, Brian. You
I-
will use it.
I know a couple people want to speak on everything that Mr. Curtin has done for this town, and what I'm gonna do is I have two requests from the audience, and then I'll go to the board members, and Mr. Morandi is asked to go last. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, Brian, but Mr. Gallagher.
I think I'm gonna have the last say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, John, Lynn, friends and family. I won't go back this far, but I met Brian in 1962 on the field at the Union School. And you could tell even at that age that, you know, he was an uncommon kid. He had a work ethic. He was already devoted to his church. He was already involved heavily in town government. He worked with some of the, you know, some of the icons in Burlington, Deacon Doyle, Alan Dickey Wild, Barbara Berto, Dan Valenti, all of those guys. So it wasn't really until I got on the board, your board, in 1982 that I got to see his qualities really up close and personal. And although he was involved in many huge issues, there were four that come to mind for me that I was involved in and I can recall most vividly. The first one was the bond issues. If you recall, those of you who are old enough to recall, in 1985, the prime rate was 14%, and our debt service was a large component of the town budget. So I got a call one day from Brian. He said, I want you to rent a bus. I've got a crew from S&P coming into town. I want you to take them on a tour and all the projects and all the high taxpayers. Well, at the time, I didn't know S&P from XYZ, and I said to Brian, well, gee, Brian, we already have a grocery store. And he said, he was very patient. He said, no, it's Standard & Poor. They're coming into town, and it's really critical. I'm going to make a presentation to them on our budget, our revenue stream, our building permits, all of the projects, et cetera, and see if we can raise the bond rating. He did that, and subsequently we went from single A to double A, and then a year later we went to triple A. And at that time, we were one of only 15 communities in the state that had triple A ratings. So that was accomplished, and I can't even estimate how many millions of dollars over the years that saved us in terms of debt service. The next one was the Ice Palace. Brian liked to make phone calls, and I got a phone call, a couple of the other board members, and Brian says, I want to buy the Ice Palace. Oh, we laughed. It was the post-Bobby Orr era, and all the ice rinks were closing, and this thing was a white elephant. It had been vacant for a number of years. And I said, Brian, you know, they're never going to go for it. The board won't go for it. We don't want another department. We got a hiring freeze, et cetera, et cetera. So Brian says, no, that's not going to happen. I have a plan. It fits in the bond schedule, and I'm searching for a lessee, lessor, one of the two. So I said, but Brian, it's never going to happen. So he says, hey, you put it on the agenda. I'll take care of the rest. So subsequently, it did go on the agenda, and it sailed through both the Board of Selectmen and town meeting. The third one was the Smetator property. All of us, I'm sure, over the years You know, Jerry was a big player in town for a long time. The family was well-known. It was the old poor farm. And we all assumed that we would be getting that property ultimately and making a cemetery there. Well, much to our chagrin, we got a notice that they had sold it to a developer for as many as 50 units. And the sword of Damocles that was hanging over the town's head was if we didn't approve it, they would do it 40B and double or triple the number of units. So there was a lot of weeping and moaning and gnashing of teeth and finger pointing and whose fault is this, etc. And again, I got a phone call from Brian, and he said, how's it going? And I said, it's not good, not going good. Everybody's upset. And Brian says, well, do you have a P&S? I said, yeah, I'm looking at it right here. It's right in front of me. And he says, is it executed by all the concerned parties? So I double-checked, and sure enough, it was. And Brian says, well, don't worry about it. We'll get the property. I've been researching it and for a period of time, and I find that they have a farm exemption, which means the town has the right of first refusal. And the beauty of having an executed agreement was that they couldn't come back in and renegotiate the purchase price because it was already set in stone. So we did get that, and Pine Havens turned out to be what we thought it would ultimately be, although it's not contiguous to the cemetery. It is another good item for us. I might also add that the Ice Palace, of course, came true, what Brian said about the fact that we would pay off the bond, we would make a profit, and we would return it to the tax rolls. And it's now a pretty important asset in the town. And the last one is, most people don't know, but as you know, the landlocked land was a hugely controversial item back in those days. And there had been a change in the Board of Selectmen majority. The town had always looked at the idea of getting the property. There were a number of problems associated with it. There were 36 total parcels there, 16 of which were in tax title, because after the state had taken the property and paid off the owners, a lot of them disappeared, and we didn't actually know who the owners were. So, I'm hearing myself, thank you. So, would have been hugely expensive, General, would have been hugely expensive for us to foreclose on 16 individual parcels for tax title. So we didn't do that, and at the time there was a growing chorus of voices in the town. The sewer lines were bursting at the seams, and guys were rushing up in the streets. The well fields had been poisoned, as you know, well know. So there was a growing chorus of interest in obtaining that land, but the board wasn't moving forward. There was a lot of controversy. Until one day we got a phone call from Brian, and he asked us, you know, what's going on with that? Are you moving forward? Are you doing anything? And we said, you know, we can't come to a consensus. And Brian says, well, let me just tell you that a fellow who will remain nameless at the moment was into my office at the window trying to pay taxes on these parcels that were in tax title. And of course, if he was able to do that, he would have established some trail of ownership. So of course, Brian didn't allow that to happen. And when the rest of the board heard what had happened, that was the impetus that was necessary for us to go forward. Again, it was hugely controversial, but in the end, the board did pass it, and town meeting subsequently approved it, and by referendum, it was also approved. So, you know, by that one act, that one tipping point, it enabled us to acquire 300 acres of pristine woodland over there on the landlocked land. So only time will tell what goes on there, but certainly as a community, it's something that we have that very few other communities inside of 128 have. So I would just conclude by saying that, you know, you work for 40 years in the town, you get a chair. which is an honorarium. But I think the real honorarium for Brian is that he had the pleasure of serving the town for 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, buddy.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, both boards, family, friends, and guests. I'm the president of the Burlington Community Scholarship Foundation, to which the genius of Joan and Steve Miles and Brian Curtin began in 1988. In 1993, Brian recruited me to join this organization, and to date, we have an estimated $11.2 million have been awarded to Burlington scholars, thanks to Brian Curtin, Joan, and Steve Miles. We've had some enhancements over the years as times have changed. Pre-COVID, adult scholarships for those going back to school to finish a degree or begin another degree. We also have an apprentice program to help for tuition and tools for those that are coming out of the trade schools who want to go into the trades, thanks to Brian and his assistance as treasurer. Due to the difficulties with fundraisers in recent years, in particular with COVID, Brian has partnered up with me on his own time, after hours and before hours, to help us seek corporate sponsors. The first of which in recent years was Mercedes-Benz of Burlington and the $150,000 corporate sponsorship for Millipore. None of this could be done without Brian. Brian, thank you for your service and to make what you've always done, make a better Burlington. God bless. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I had no other requests to speak, so I will jump to the board. At this point, I will start with Mr. Hogan.
I have had the pleasure of knowing Brian as both a department head, member of the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen. And one of the things that I'm going to add to Phil and Jack's list is the work he did on the insurance. He had a committee started and was working with them, and when there was a lot of backslapping about who's doing what and why is it costing so much money, Brian just quietly went about coming up with the answers so that we could have a solid insurance that has grown and everyone's being taken care of, and we're not spending oodles of money just to pay premium. So that's my contribution to one of the many more things that Brian has done. The town has certainly benefited, and that's a very valuable chair, Brian. So
Thank you.
use it with your grandson watching TV. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Priest.
Thank you. Mr. Curtin, I believe that everyone's right in saying that a chair and some words don't like some 40 years of service to the community. You know, you didn't just come in and provide us with paper shuffling and, you know, keeping our dollars in order. It was 40 years of effort and humility, giving of yourself to this community. I don't think that we can properly thank you enough or in the right way, and I hope that this is the beginning of at least our recognition of that, and hopefully years of us thanking you repeatedly, despite how much you may begin to hate it, for everything that you've done for us, because what we've seen tonight, what we've heard, is just the tip of the iceberg of the things that you've helped this town accomplish. And I truly, personally can't thank you enough. So, from me, thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Mr. Priest, Mr. Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian's certainly worthy of all the accolades he's received here this evening. But the one thing I would like to add is that it's certainly been my good pleasure to have known Brian on a personal level for well over 20 years now. He's just a good guy. I mean, there's really no other way to put that. I think just based on the number of people sitting here in attendance tonight to be here, you know, to recognize his time here with Burlington sort of speaks for itself. So with that, I'll just say thank you very much for your service and congratulations and good luck in your retirement.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Again, as I stated earlier, Mr. Morandi has requested to go last, so I will chime in at this point. Brian, people, when they give service to the town, many people give it in years of service. You've given this town decades of services, over multiple generations. I'm not trying to point your age out, but I'm just saying, the amount of dedication you've shown to the town and the people in town is phenomenal. And as Jack previously mentioned with the scholarships, you've been involved not only in the town, but the CCD program, scholarships, youth sports. You have given so much to the town and to the people of Burlington. And I think I'd be correct in assuming that even with all the brains we have in this room, as a collective group, we could probably never count up the number of individual lives you've changed because of who you are, what you've done, and just the number of people you've helped over the years. So this is my thank you to you, and I will now turn it over to Mr. Morandi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as we sit here tonight and talk about Brian Curtin, we've talked about his acclimates as far as his town, the stuff he's done for this town of Burlington, which is absolutely incredible, that the things that you've accomplished for this town, the money that you've saved this town, the bond issues, the ice rink, the scholarship foundation, the number of people that you've helped in this town when they've had a problem with their taxes or they've had a problem with their health insurance. The list can go on, and we could sit here for another hour. If this was pre-COVID when we were supposed to have this, and we were supposed to get up and speak, there's a few of us in the room that were supposed to get up and speak, we'd still be talking. Phil would be anyway. Phil would still be talking. You sit here tonight and try to reflect on everything you accomplished. It's almost impossible in a one-night event. Your family's here, your son's here, grandson, daughter, I don't know who else is over there, I can't see the TVs in the way, but the group of people that you worked with for a number of years, the new gentleman down the back, the new guy, we put him at the end of the list, just in case you were wondering. He doesn't have the time vested yet, so he always goes last on our agenda. But Brian, I'm gonna tell you something straight out. My father, myself, have considered you part of our family since the day I met you at the barbershop 40 years ago. You've helped out more people, including my family. I can never thank you for the things that you've done for this town, for my dad, my family. This chair represents 40 years of service. You should have a whole dining room set. That's what you should have here, Brian. And from the bottom of my heart, I truly want to say thank you from my family, personal family, and the town of Burlington, that family. So Brian, congratulations.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Take this for a test drive. Would you like to say anything?
Yes, I just have a few things I'd like to say, comment. It's very humbling. Thank you very much for everybody that's spoken, obviously. I'm not used to hearing people talk about me. I want to thank the Board of Selectmen for tonight. This is very nice. The last 2 years have been difficult and challenging, I think, for all of us. And it obviously wasn't the way that I wanted to retire, or the time I wanted to retire. It was the time I wanted to retire, but not under those circumstances, obviously. So just to reiterate what everybody said, I have been truly blessed to have been elected and serve this great town for 44 years. The confidence the residents gave me to represent them daily was something that, was instilled in me as a child growing up by my parents. To be honest, to get involved in community service. I was fortunate to be able to work in the town I grew up and love. When you are passionate about something, as I think we all are as elected officials, or you wouldn't be here, it's never a burden. and it's always something that you enjoy doing every day. The challenge of collecting the town's taxes and the responsibility of investing those funds, I took very seriously. Together with the support of the Ways and Means Committee, town meeting, selectmen, we, as Phil said, were able to create a AAA credit rating for the town and establish this community as one of the lowest tax rates in the state that always welcomed business. That enabled the town to be fiscally sound, establishing the following trust fund balances. We have roughly $10.6 million in a stabilization fund, $14.4 million in an OPEB fund. We have a health insurance trust fund of over $10 million. We have free cash of roughly at $16.7 million, depending how much was spent at town meeting. And we've been consistently free cash the last 3 years have been over $10 million, which is unheard of in most communities. I want to thank, obviously, my wife, Gail, of 43 years, and who supported me, and it wasn't easy being married to an elected official in this town, as everybody knows, as you guys know. It's not easy. I want to thank my family. Obviously, my son Brian's here, my daughter Brittany, my daughter-in-law Katie, my grandson Liam, and granddaughter Maeve, who I'm very proud of. I could not have accomplished any of these towns' financial successes without wonderful and committed staff. Their talent and their loyalty over the 40 years gave me the confidence and support I needed to accomplish our goals. Many of my staff members are here tonight. My two assistants, Terry Clement and Andrea O'Shea, as well as some of the staff members, Christine Sinicola, Paula McMahon, Lisa Runyon, Sheila Flaherty. I don't know who else is over there. I think that's it. And Lynn. I have to obviously especially thank Phil Gallagher, Jack Farron, Paul Cabral, Al Fay, and Dick Howard. And of course, Joe Morandi and the board for all their support. My friends, elected officials who I serve with over the 40 years supported me in their friendship. They helped me through many challenging years. In closing, as Bob mentioned, I'm most proud of the health insurance and life insurance programs and the retirement benefits that we were able to award. And it was the most rewarding part of my job for helping active and retired employees make educated decisions on choosing health and retirement benefits. I was privileged, and I am still serving as a member of the Middlesex County Retirement Board. It's the 4th largest pension system in the state, providing retirement benefits for 10,000 active and 5,500 retired police, fire, and other municipal employees. I'm very proud of that involvement. As Phil mentioned, the Burlington Ice Palace, Jack mentioned the Scholarship Foundation, and I'm currently a member of the Burlington Housing Authority, which just recently got elected for a 5-year term, 2021. Love serving this town. Hopefully I can continue to make a difference, and thank you so much.
Before we have you try to, Mr. Denizio, would you like to chime in? I didn't want to leave you out of the picture.
Oh, sure, thank you, and I guess I get to go last. So I met Brian about 3 years ago when I was interviewing for this job, and we talked a little bit, and after he knew about 60% of the people that I knew, I was a little bit scared. But it was that day, I don't want to talk about all the accomplishments you made professionally. This was a personal thing for me. It was that day, I said, geez, Brian, you've been here almost as long as I've been alive. How are you still working for? And he looked at me, and a smile on his face, and he said what you hear a million times people say. This is the first time I actually believed it, and he said, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And that meant something to me. It's the first time I ever believed anybody saying that, Brian. So when he says he loved when he worked here, he certainly meant it that day for sure.
I did. Thank you, John.
Yep.
So Brian, why don't you try it out?
Thank you. And I just want to mention too that very happy and proud to have been succeeded by Gary Giannino.
So while you take a seat, I think we should all stand and thank you again, Brian. We're gonna come around and grab a photo.
I don't think I'll be sitting there very long.
Yeah, we're gonna grab some photos.
Yeah, get your
Brian.
grandkids, get your grandkids up here, Ryan,
Yep.
Brian with you.
And your kids.
Get your staff up there. Staff stay present.
No, they say great.
We'll stay in the back, you take pictures with your family. Yeah.
I think we just blew up the agenda.
Gary's thankfully not on it tonight.
That's why you retire right there.
Taxes. Volunteer service.
Wish the tax rates in Reading were up just as low.
We need you, big guy.
This is my sweetie.
Brian, how about one with your staff members?
Really, that used to
Sounds
be you.
good.
Yes, yeah, not anymore.
Christine, round them up.
I'm just trying to wrestle up too.
I know, it's sweet, good.
Happy tears, Brian. Happy tears.
More tissues.
Lynn, come on.
You're on my side. You're on my side. You were on the office.
I didn't think so.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Just leave back my closet till tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll get it tomorrow. Well, thank you for those kind words. Appreciate it.
Yes or no?
Brian, you know you have to give that back.
Okay, give it 1 second while the room clears out.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Hey, Chairman, could we just take a 5-minute adjournment?
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break while the room clears.
I'm not quite sure I like the terminology. Until the room.
Select Board appointment to the Board of Appeals, an alternate member, and one is a town administrator appointment to the Housing Partnership Planning Board rep. So, we received one application for the alternate member of the Board of Appeals, Mr. Jeremy Harrington. I don't know if he's here or if he's out in the, he is out on the WebEx. Mr. Harrington, are you there? You are, wish you to introduce yourself to the board? Mr. Harrington, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Harrington, if you don't mind introducing yourself to the board and let us know a little bit about you.
Well, hello, everybody. My name's Jeremy Harrington. I've been living here in town for about 8 years, and I really wanted to put myself forward to become a contributor to the community. I think I have a lot I can offer to help as Burlington continues to develop and move forward. I've got a pass in the restaurant industry, and I currently work in corporate supply chain strategy for Staples, which is everybody knows. And besides being here the last 8 years living in town, I've spent my just over 40 years on this planet living in Massachusetts. I grew up in Belmont, playing sports against Burlington. I know this area well. I've seen it develop quite a bit. And now that my family really has put roots down here, you know, we want to be more of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. I'll start with Mr. Runyon. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr.
No, sir.
Mr. Marini?
No, thank you.
Mr. Priest?
I'll just note that Mr. Harrington is also going to be one of our at-large members on the Transportation Committee. I love his enthusiasm and involvement, and I really appreciate him getting involved in the community.
No, I'm good.
And I'm good as well. Okay, in that case, I'll be looking for a motion to approve or appoint Mr. Jeremy Harrington as an alternate member to the Board of Appeals.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained? 5-0-0.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Mr. Harrington.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited.
Okay, Mr. Denizio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next appointment is for the planning board.
Member Barbara LaRue replace Ernie Cavino as the appointed planning board representative to the Housing Partnership Committee. Mr. Cavino resigned at our last meeting, I believe, or maybe 2 meetings ago. We received an email from the chair of the planning board requesting this. So on behalf of the town administrator, the planning board recommendation, Mr. Sagarino appoints Barbara LaRue to the Housing Partnership Committee as the planning board representative and asks the board to waive their 15-day waiting period.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor of waiving the 15-day waiting period?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, 5-0-0. Thank you, Mr. Denizio. And you're up again at number 286.
Should we recognize Chief Patterson for this one?
Absolutely. Chief Patterson. Chief will have you do the presentation, and then Mr. Denizio can make the recommendation of appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here tonight to recommend retired Fire Captain Kevin Brown to the position of limited assignment firefighter. What a limited assignment firefighter is very similar to a special police officer, in which that individual is able to work special details for the department, basically when a permanent member cannot fill that detail. This is something we haven't really done for a number of years, but we feel at this time it's appropriate to request this appointment.
Thank you, Chief. Mr.
Chairman,
Denizio.
so on behalf of the town administrator, with the chief's recommendation, Mr. Sagarino appoints retired Captain Kevin Brown to the position of limited assignment firefighter and ask the board to waive their 15-day waiting period.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of waiving the 15-day waiting period?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. It's a great idea, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, one more thing.
Yes.
Betty had asked that in our appointment for the, which one was it, Board of Appeals, that we didn't waive the 15-day waiting period, and we want them to start right away. But it's a board appointment, so I'm not sure the board needs to wait the 15 days on your own appointments.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, but if Betty said so.
I mean, if you'd like to redo it.
Well, Attorney needs
So
to.
Council said we're good.
Okay.
With your appointments, they're yours as opposed to somebody else's you're not making, so that it's time for you to review, but there would be no need for that to happen for you.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. Okay, 287, discussion and/or approval. Northwest Park Housing Plan, Affordable Housing Agreement, 174 Middlesex Turnpike. Mr. Buckley, if you would approach.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. Before I begin, I'd like to add my congratulations to Brian, having worked with him over 30 years. It was very interesting and very dedicated to the town. So, but I'm here this evening. I've been working with town council as a condition of the project at Northwest Park that entails the 4th Avenue housing project, that the first phase of it that was approved by town meeting, to try to target it towards seniors to address what we perceive as a need. There was a committee that was formed by town meeting that went through the nuts and bolts of it in terms of the criteria, the marketing plan that was approved. And one of the conditions was that there'll be a regulatory agreement negotiated for the town to protect the town's interests that would become part of the record title, memorializing the agreement and the processes to ensure the affordability. So I've been working with town council over the last few months, and I think we're there, but I'll defer it to town council on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board, and thank you, Mr. Buckley. So that's all true, and we have come up with an agreement that will be perpetual in nature, that will protect the town's interest and make sure that 70% of these, 14%, 23 units, I scared Mr. Buckley there for a minute.
You almost went great.
And right, I know, I was working at there. But that 70% of them will be reserved for Burlington residents, so long as it doesn't violate fair housing laws, and the marketing plan that has gone into effect hopes to accomplish that. So the agreement is ready to be signed. We did get some comments today from a member of the committee. Those comments, to the extent they were applicable, were incorporated into the document.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. Mr. Runyon, I know you've been very heavily involved with housing in town. Did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually part of that committee, and the only thing I'd like to say is that the committee was very passionate about this development. They put in quite a bit of time, numerous Zoom meetings, so forth, and I think we have a really good agreement here. I'm particularly pleased with the marketing plan that Bob and Todd had with their consultants have put together. For I'm anxious to see that in the works.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Ms. Moretti?
No, thank you.
Mr. Priest?
I just want to say that this is an interesting project and much appreciated in terms of the relationship and working through this as proactively as humanly possible. It's hopefully one that will continue to benefit the people of Burlington. I know that's something that we very much have a very strong eye toward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At least knowing three of the players here in the room tonight and some of the others who are involved, I have to feel comfortable supporting what's going on here for the town, for the residents who will benefit from this. So thank the three of you and all others involved. So I'm all set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. I would also like to thank all the participants, the involved parties, as well as the committee for all their hard work on this. I think it's a great idea, and I think we need to make a motion to approve.
And authorize the chair to sign. I think that's what we did.
So is that one or two votes?
You can do it in one vote.
So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the Northwest Park Housing Plan and authorize the chair to sign it.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's a suggested motion here in that backup that I'm happy to read.
Okay?
So I move to approve the regulatory agreement from Northwest Park 4th Ave owner LLC with an address, CO the Norbloom Company, 71 3rd Ave, Burlington, Mass. 01803 for the multifamily residential project containing 167 units, of which 23 shall be designated as affordable on property known as 174 Middlesex Turnpike, Burlington, Massachusetts, in accordance with the Northwest Park Plan Development Zoning Provisions and Special Conditions amended through 2019 of the Town of Burlington zoning bylaws, and to authorize the chair to execute same on behalf of the board once the exhibits have been fully populated.
Well stated. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of Mr. Priest's motion? Aye. Opposed, abstained? 5-0-0.
Thank you. In closing, could I just say that I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the efforts of the planning board staff and to reflect upon what was said earlier this evening with Mr. Curtin. What you see tonight is, I think, a very innovative program, which I think you're going to find perhaps other communities will copy it. But I think you all should be proud of the fact that the reason you have the opportunity to embark on a program like this is that the town was proactive and put themselves in a position where they were in excess of 10% and said, okay, we don't have the adverse situation, so let's try to be creative. And I think this is the result of that. So a lot of people have worked very hard and are very passionate. I want to thank town council for being very responsive, because lawyers sometimes aren't responsive, but your town council is very responsive in providing comments and guidance, and hopefully we'll make this a project that everyone in this room and the community and myself will be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Okay, item 288, discussion on the Vine Road watershed assessment. Mr. Keeley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here tonight with Jeff Malloy, our consultant on the MVP grant from the BSC group. Also, Eileen Coleman from the Conservation Department is here on the WebEx as well. So as you probably remember, we got a grant from the state for the MVP program, which is the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which basically is to help communities prepare and adapt and mitigate the effects of climate change on their communities. So our grant is focused on the Vine Brook watershed, which is a portion of town which has Vine Brook obviously in it, Sandy Brook, Long Meadow Brook, the Burlington Mall. So it's probably over half the town's area, but it's also the part of town most susceptible to flooding currently and projected to be even worse with increased rainfall. A lot of heat island effect because of the pavement in that area. So Jeff's got a brief presentation he wants to give you on the grant and our proposal. Jeff, take it away.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the board for placing this item on the agenda this evening. It's a project that we're really excited about, and John gave a really nice overview. So I don't need to give too much more background information than that. I do, if I can quickly share my screen here, I can start with just, can we see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is the watershed for Vine Brook, and it shows the two tributaries to Vine Brook, Sandy Brook, Long Meadow Brook. So this is the study area that we're looking at, and to go back a couple years, this was an outcome of the MVP findings report when Burlington first participated in this program a few years ago. So just a quick close-up of the Vine Brook watershed. relative to urban heat island effect and the flooding that John mentioned earlier. And what's also really interesting is there's a great deal of overlap between these two sources of climate exposure. So in addition to the development area and residential development and naturalized areas, it's just a really important area to be focusing on in the community. So just quickly, what we're trying to do is identify locations to implement nature-based solutions, right? So again, as I just said, we've got a lot of overlapping challenges in the watershed. So we're doing background data analysis. There's a field data collection element. There's going to be a prioritization, a rankings index that's created that allows us to prioritize locations within the watershed to implement nature-based solutions. But there's also a robust community engagement piece of this process as well. What does the community engagement piece looks like? A website has been developed for the town for this project. So what we're trying to do is use the website as a repository for information, educational purposes. When we have deliverables for the project, this is where they go. We're also going to do a really cool engagement approach called Photo Voice, where we reach out to the community and ask them to take photographs in the community within the watershed and provide a brief narrative. And that really tells us what the interests of the community members are, and we're trying to reach as many people as we possibly can through various approaches. And then we've got a report that's going to be written. I mentioned that already. And this is what the schedule looks like. So it's a year-long grant program. It actually occurs over about 10 and a half months when you're actually doing the rigorous work associated with it. So there's a lot to do here. I guess I'd like to just take the last couple minutes of our time on the agenda to I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll request any questions or field any questions that you may have.
So, Mr. Keeley? Okay, Mr. Hogan, I'll start with you. Any questions on
Not
this?
at this time.
Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So how are we collecting the data? We talk about the data collection process.
Yeah, great question. So what we did is we're using a whole bunch of different sources of geographic information, GIS data. So on the website, we've developed an online data viewer that's got just a whole bunch of really good data on it. And then there is another data source that we're really focused on that the state encourages us to use it as well. It's a data layer that prioritizes the use of nature-based solutions. So it's they call it the coastal resilience viewer, but it's actually, it includes inland areas as well. So what we're doing is we're taking all this information, compiling it into one place, and then trying to find opportunities for where these nature-based solutions are appropriate. And then we're going to actually go into the field and field truth them. There's a similar methodology that was used last year as part of an MVP grant project in the towns of Air, Devens, and Harvard, and that was called the Apple Country Project. So they looked at those three communities and did a similar exercise. If you were to Google it, you would find the website developed for that project relatively easily. So yeah, it's a bunch of desktop data analysis followed by a field ground truthing assessment. Make sure what we're actually seeing, through the digital data collection is appropriate, and then we use all that information to create a prioritized scoring system based on criticalities, certain types of vulnerabilities. We are looking, the MVP program focuses exclusively, or one of its primary issues it focuses on is socially vulnerable populations. So we're doing some specific analysis within the environmental justice polygons within your community as well.
When you say nature-based solutions, could you just give a couple of examples of those?
Can you say that again? I was talking to my son real quick too. I've got a 5-year-old who's hungry.
No worries, I completely understand.
Yeah, say that again for me.
When you say nature-based solutions, could you just provide a couple of examples of that?
Yeah, sure. So a real common one is a rain garden, right? Or a restoration area that converts pervious pavement to a wetland replication area, let's say. Impervious another good example is actually an ongoing project I'm working on right now is stream daylighting, where you could take a buried stream channel, daylight it, create riparian zones adjacent to the stream channel. So that's a few just quick examples. A lot of what we're trying to do is really convert impervious surface to green space. So that could include tree plantings, right? It's more vegetation within this area that's highly, highly impervious.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Is there Randy?
No questions.
Runyon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me just say, John, good job, you and your staff, being aware of grants like this and going after them. I'm sure that that process, I'm sure is very lengthy. It involves a lot of your work. So thank you for that. What caught my attention was the community engagement component of the plan you have there. So my question is, and I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is, you'll have a link to the somewhere on your town page to this website for folks who want to, this page.
Right. We've talked to Amy. We'll make it as accessible as possible, putting it on a lot of pages. Jeff's a master at outreach.
Good, glad to hear. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. I have no questions at this time, so. This is just discussion. We don't need to vote on this, so.
No.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Keeley. I'm sorry, I forget your presenter's name.
Jeff.
Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you all. I appreciate your time this evening. Good night.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 289 is discussion. Airbnb prohibition. Ms. Kastner, you are out there on WebEx.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So we submitted a draft to your office, so hopefully you have a draft in front of you, the letter. In discussion, well, first let me back up. So at one of last year's town meetings, after many neighborhood complaints and issues we were having, we took a look at short-term rentals. And if you recall, we prohibited short-term rentals. We created a category, defined it, and essentially prohibited short-term rentals in Burlington. We've had some follow-up with Airbnb and some other companies, and what they have requested, in order for them to put any notification in their system that Burlington essentially prohibits short-term rentals, they need a letter from the chief elected bodies of the community, which are you, and so then to state that short-term rentals are prohibited in Burlington. And with that, we can send it to them and hopefully follow through with allowing on their end for raising awareness about the prohibition and use in Burlington. So that's what's in front of you.
Thank you, Ms. Kastner. I'll start with the second. Mr. Runyon, any questions?
I actually, just to town council, here, is this enforceable, in your opinion? Or if send a letter through Airbnb or?
Well, I think it's a notice. I'm not sure what the conversation Ms. Airbnb, but basically notifying them in advance so they can notify their owners not to advertise. So the enforceability actually comes on the ground, of course, through the building commissioner. And I think this is an attempt to help limit the amount. So does Airbnb have to do this and notify people? No, they don't. But I think it's an attempt to help them get ahead of it. I will tell you that I know Airbnb does this because we've had it happen in other communities. So they do notify their constituents, their customers, of the zoning laws in the particular town they're located in.
Okay, fine.
Okay, Mr. Morandi. Oh, you back? Ms. Kastner, yes.
No, just in order for them to do that, they had asked that we get a letter from you. So that's kind of the trigger to.
So this is a formality for them to block Burlington off their site.
Yeah, we've called and they said, well, that's well and good that you're telling us, but we'd like a letter. So that's the
Okay.
letter in front of you. Thank you very much.
Understandable. Thank you. Mr. Randy?
No, I think it's a good thing. I think that, a couple of years ago, it came up in front of us, and there was a couple subcommittee meetings that I attended, and there was really nothing that we could really do about it, because we don't have the law enforcement to go, we don't have the people that go to the houses and check and see what's going on. We don't know what's going on, so this could be a good thing for us, so I would support this 100%.
I agree. Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I definitely support this. My biggest concern when this first came before us was that, Airbnb does not require, to my knowledge, background checks on the people renting. And so now you've got people, with any type of background living in residential areas that were not zoned for rentable property. So it gets very, very, confusing very, very quickly. But my question was the same as Mr. Runyon's around the enforceability of it. I know we've been talking about this for a while. I think it's time for us to take a hard look at creating an enforcement position within the building commissioner's office to ensure that we've got somebody actually in the field doing enforcements, because it's all well and good that Airbnb, is taking active measures to do that, but I'm not gonna rely on them, to make sure that they shut it down. I think that needs to be on us, to a certain extent from an enforcement perspective. So I support this, but I also think we should be looking from an enforcement perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Nick. The basic concept might have been a nice idea and may still be in some places, but like all things, people find a way of abusing it, and we don't need that abuse here in Burlington, so I'm very much in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. As previously stated, it's a bylaw enforceable under the building inspector's office, and Nick, I think you made a great point with the enforcement officer. Of course, that's something we need to discuss down the road, but we don't need to approve this, or do we need to take a vote on this? It's just a discussion, right?
I think if you want to send a letter, the board needs to.
So I think we should take a vote, yeah, just to, so I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, hold on. Either John or Lynn, it's listed on the agenda as discussion. Are we able to take a vote tonight, or should we post it for a vote on the agenda for the next meeting?
It should be posted for a vote instead of just
Okay,
discussion.
so can we do that for the next meeting?
So we can continue this to the next meeting. Yes, Mr.
Could either Kristen or town council provide us with a sample letter?
I think it's in your backup.
It's in the packet,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Okay, so we'll continue this to our next meeting. Okay. Item,
Thank you, Kristen.
yep, item 290, discussion/approval, consideration of the removal of the center island located on Stone Hill Circle. Do we have someone that wants to present? Please come up to the table, identify yourself, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rakesh Agrawal. I live on 3 Stone Hill Circle. And that neighborhood, they built in 1996. It was a bigger circle initially, then all the snow removals and the trash guys, trucks, they had very hard time to make a turn there. Then we talked with Mr. Chaudhary. He was then superintendent of DPW, I believe. So at that time they said, okay guys, we will remove part of the circle instead of having, I don't know the dimension, it was 20 feet, let's say diameter, they reduced to 12 feet diameter. But even then, sir, all the sidings, granites are sunk in because of the trucks are driving all over, and grass is dead, and all the people walking, they dog, they pee and they just do their stuff on it. It looks very nasty, sir. And it's not safe either because a lot of trucks still having a problem. Delivery trucks and snow removals and the trash peoples. All the residents would like if you kindly approve it, to remove it and put asphalt on it, that'd be great, sir.
Okay, you said how many residents?
There are 6 residents on that street.
You said all of them are in favor of it? Or?
5 of them are favors.
Could I speak up? My name is Gary Brzezinski.
One second, sir, one second, sir. Mr. Denizio, we have any, literature, letters or?
Yeah, so, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's two letters in your backup that are from two of the 6 residents that indicate that they're not in favor of removing the island. There's also some response from the DPW who said that they're not in favor of removing the island, that they wouldn't do it on the town's dime. And if it was approved by this board and that it was going to be a private removal, that the contractor, if you were to approve something like that, that the contractor would need to be approved by the DPW first before anything happened.
Thank you. Okay, sir, can you just identify yourself for the board again?
Oh, sure. My name is Gary Mazinski, and I am one of the two that doesn't really see the need for removal of that island.
Pay for it.
But if it was, as the I guess it was, the cost was going to be taken up by the residents. But I think if there is going to be a cost to the residents, it should be to those who want it versus those who don't. That was my input. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else that wants to speak on this? Out there in the WebEx? None? Okay. Okay, we'll start. Mr. Hogan.
Do we have any history in town of this happening before? Anybody know?
The response that we got was that Tom didn't know of it happening before. Tom Hayes didn't know of it happening before.
Okay.
There has been street openings and things like that, but not a removal.
And if they were to do it, if we were to say, go ahead and do it, the residents would pay for it, not us, correct?
Yes, DPW made it clear that it wouldn't be something that the town would pay for.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have objection. Why town resident pay for that? It's town property, and anything happen to the street, potholes or anything, town take care of that. And why resident have to pay for that removal of cul-de-sac?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Denizio, but this is not something the town wants to do. It's not something that they planned on doing. It's not something we budgeted money for. It's something that you were requesting, and the town, I think it's a slippery slope if the town starts paying for a resident's request that does not, is not a request from the town or a need for the town.
I understand that, sir, but we can be waited for 26 years. I mean, when the town have the funding or street need to be paved, we can wait for that time. We don't have to do right away.
The stipulation from the DPW is that the town shouldn't pay for this. So let me move on to the rest of the board. Mr. Priest?
Pass for now.
Mr. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, I don't see how this is a town issue, to be honest with you. There's an island that was put in there by the builders years ago that they put an island in, starting to sink, starting to do whatever it's doing over there. I did drive by, took a look at it. The residents that don't want to pay for it, they shouldn't have to pay for it, and the residents of the town shouldn't have to pay for this. I don't think it's feasible at all. So I would be against this, having it done.
Thank you, Mr. Randy. Mr. Runyon?
You know, if this was a unanimous decision from the neighborhoods or the people affected here, I think it would be easy. Where we have a difference of opinion in the neighborhood, I certainly don't want to be the guy to resolve the differences of opinions in a particular neighborhood. If they can come back to us with a proposal, I know Mr. Zinski did make some sort of a gesture that perhaps there's could be some room for a meeting of the minds if the 4 out of 6 that want to see the thing go agree to pay for it, and But otherwise, yeah, I don't think that's a decision for this board to be making.
Thank you, Mr. Onion.
I have 5 out of 6, sir, actually.
Okay,
Well,
five or
you
six.
did get 2 letters opposing it.
2 letter opposing, okay. Opposing because they don't want to pay it.
Well, whatever the reason is, we have 2 letters of in opposition, and just to follow up what the other members said, I'd hate to see neighbor go after neighbor down there. Hopefully, neighbors can get together and reach some sort of resolution on their own. But what I can tell you is, and I'm a firm believer in this, is that the town has said that if it's a private request, and the town funds should not be used at private request, because then the next person's gonna come along and say, hey, you did it on Stonehill, we want you to pay for this, we want you to pay for that. So I don't think that's a good precedent to set for the town. There you go, that's it. So that's how I feel about this. Again, I'm as presented and not on the town's dime, so to speak. So, Mr. Denizio.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to be clear that the DPW didn't think it was a hazard. The street isn't being paved anytime soon. That could be a potential solution at some point when the street is scheduled to be paved, that we could reconsider it then. So we could put that on Mr. Hayes' radar, that if at some time when they repave that street. But as of right now, it isn't a hazard, and so there would be no reason for them to modify, remove, or anything like that.
Yes, sir.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So do we just want to not approve or just table the matter? How do we?
Just leave it to DPW.
Yeah, I'll just refer it to DPW.
Yeah, I think you're directing staff to
Yeah.
find out when it's gonna be.
All right, so why don't we do that? We'll have staff find out the timeline for paving, and, you know, maybe we can get addressed then. I just don't want to make any promises we can't keep, but I think that way, also the integrity of the neighborhood stays. In other words, neighbors stay neighbors. I'd hate to see neighbors get upset with each other.
Any time frame, sir, or?
Well, that's what we were gonna check on.
So we'll get the letter or something.
Well, Mr. Denizio is gonna reach out to DPW.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully we'll be able to reach back to you with something.
Appreciate that, sir. Thank you
All
very
right,
much, Mr.
thank you.
Chairman. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Need-
You can have, we have it in backup.
Item 291 is a new public hearing for alteration of premises for, someone say something? All right, for, 100 District Ave, the Tavern and Square, and also approval of a new manager. I believe Mr. Vaughn is presenting on this.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn with...
Mr. Vaughn, I just want to make sure we open the public hearing first.
Okay, sure.
Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So made.
Is there a second? Second, all those in favor? Aye, opposed, abstained, okay. Mr. Vaughn?
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Mark Vaughn, representing the petitioner, Tavern in the Square, in connection with the application that's before you. As you read, it's alteration of premises and a new manager. With me tonight are Stephen D'Souza, who is a principal with Tavern in the Square, with me virtually, I should say, along with Jennifer Waite, who was listed as the manager of record. So just very briefly, I know you're all obviously familiar with Tavern in the Square, but it's been a mainstay of the district for a number of years now. But basically what is before you is a request to be able to use on a permanent basis the outdoor seasonal dining area, which was authorized last year on a temporary basis as part of the state and the town's COVID pandemic response. I'm sure as the board recalls, the town worked cooperatively last year with a number of restaurants to try to provide some outdoor seating that would be suitable for a lot of patrons that are looking to be able to dine outside and to be able to have that optionality. So many of those were in parking lots and sidewalks and things like that. I think with the Tavern in the Square, as you can see from the plans that have been submitted, in this particular instance, it was ideally situated in that the layout of the restaurant could be accommodated in an area that's tucked to the side of the restaurant in a bit of a nook that's right there adjacent to their existing outdoor covered patio area. So the area has proven to be very popular for outdoor dining purposes, and so they are looking to be able to utilize that on a permanent basis. They've invested a fair amount of money to try to upgrade the decking and make it, very appealing and enjoyable place to be able to dine. And, you know, I think hopefully you've had an opportunity to see that. So technically it is additional seating that's out there. It's 54 seats, but the reality again is that it's being done really to provide optionality for patrons that may want to choose to sit outside as opposed to inside. So in addition, we have a manager that's been designated, Jennifer Waite, who is here on the meeting, and she has a tremendous amount of experience in the restaurant industry, particularly with Tavern, very well-versed in their operation, and I think someone that certainly fits the criteria of the board in terms of being a manager. So with that, Mr. Chairman, be happy to answer any questions or address any comments. I know I want to thank both Bob Hogan and Joe Morandi. We had an opportunity to meet with the subcommittee to talk about the proposal as well, and I don't want to certainly speak for them, but I think that they were satisfied with the concept and what's proposed. So
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I'll turn to the subcommittee.
Sure.
Mr. Hogan?
As I had mentioned here, just in casual passing at a previous meeting, they don't need me to plug them, but Nancy and I spend many evenings or even afternoons in the outdoor section. It's fabulous. They're fortunate to have the space that they could make this accommodation. I've seen nothing in this that would make me think that it would be wrong to not support it, and I do support it. And I also support Jennifer as the new manager.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Mr. Morandi?
Well, I agree with Bob. We went over this a lot today. We talked about the possibility of igloos and everything else going out there like they did last year and stuff, and that was going to be a plus. And then time frame as far as like the actual weather. So like in complete support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Morandi. Mr. Priest?
Just a silly logistical question. The additional seats being permanent, does that affect the quantity of bathrooms need to be required or any other weird logistical things that might have not been approved when the restaurant first went in?
yeah, no, it's a fair question. So the seating, I believe it's 54 that's out there. So they are making sure that from an occupancy perspective, they're not going to exceed what's required from a fixture count. I think when those seats outside are being used, they actually take a corresponding number of seats out from the inside to be able to address that. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon.
Yes, along the lines of Selectman Priest's questions, do you have to go back to planning board for approval, seeing as though there's a permanent?
yeah, no, I probably should have mentioned that at the outset, Mike. I apologize, but yeah, we did go through a special permit amendment process with the planning board to get that approved. So that happened sometime over the summer. We got an amendment to the special permit. Every restaurant requires a special permit, so we had to amend it to reflect the altered seating.
Okay, good. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. I just agree. It's an innovative way to deal with today's ongoing situation, and we do what we can to make sure our businesses get to where they need to be. This being a public hearing, I'm going to see if there's anybody from the public that wants to chime in on this. This is the Tavern, outdoor seating and new manager. Seeing nothing, I'll be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
So, okay, moved and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? 5-0-0. Meetings, public hearing is closed. Any further discussion before we get a motion to vote? Mr. Runyon?
No.
No? Mr. Morandi?
No, thank you.
Mr. Priest?
No.
Mr. Hogan?
No.
And I have nothing further. Therefore, I'll be looking for a motion to approve. Can we approve of Mr.
I was going to say, I was going to ask.
Two votes.
Two, yeah.
So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the additional outdoor seating, the alteration of premises, and then I'll be looking for a motion to approve the new manager. So is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion on the alterations of premises.
Okay, is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. All right, alteration of premises is all set.
Make a motion to approve the new manager.
Wait, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay.
All right, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. 5-0-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Welcome, guys.
Mr. Vaughn, you might as well just stay there. Item 292 is a continued public hearing, Basido. Mr. Vaughn, did you want to present, not, sorry,
No,
Mr.
this is-
Denizio?
This is the one, is no action required by the board. The license has been returned to the town. Mr. Vaughn submitted a letter to us today. We have the license in hand, so there's no action needed on this. There
Alright,
was
so
a
we just-
subcommittee meeting today where we discussed that, and so you could just close the public hearing.
Okay. I'll be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Both of us.
Joe, then Nick?
All of us.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Okay, that one is done. Item 293 is a new public hearing for an all-alcohol special legislation license for Rosa Mexicano, Burlington LLC. It's also a public hearing, so we'll open to the public in a minute. Mr. Vaughn?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn here tonight representing Rosa Mexicano, Burlington LLC, in connection with this application for a new site-specific liquor license for the Burlington Mall location formerly occupied by Basido. Obviously, we were at your meeting back in the early part of the month, at which time we were here in connection with a transfer of the Basido license. And I know that consistent with the board's prior stated desire as it relates to FOGO, there was a desire for us to instead save that Basido license and not utilize it until later in the process, and instead apply for a site-specific license. So I know you just covered a little bit of that in terms of the prior hearing. So I think, you know, Simon, Burlington Mall certainly values its relationship very much with the town. I know that John Phipps, actually, who's the Senior VP of Development with Simon, is on the call here and joined me today with both Mr. Hogan and Mr. Morandi, along with Mr. Denizio to talk about it. But the license is being returned to the town, the Basido license. And, you know, as we talked about today with the subcommittee, we are very much hopeful that the board would petition town meeting for a site-specific license for that to replace that, which I think is consistent with the prior dialogue about not taking a step back in terms of the number of licenses that are out there. So certainly appreciate that and look forward to working with the town on that.
Mr. May I just add to that, just so the board understands? We will be having a discussion to have that conversation, because we didn't have it on the agenda tonight, but what is to maybe request a couple of more licenses for ourselves, and general licenses that would be available to them all. If they use up all of their specifics, the general ones would be available to them also, but one specific to offset the Basido. So that's a conversation we're going to have. I just wanted Mr. Vaughn to know that we are on board to have that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Vaughn, you have any further? Or?
No, I do when I don't. So I do want to introduce Greg Sherman, who is joining me. He was here in person, if you recall, back in the early part of the month, but he is the Regional Director of Operations for Rosa Mexicano. I know we gave a pretty detailed presentation at that meeting just about their business, their operation. Again, they're occupying the space formerly occupied by Basido. Only change is going to be, in terms of physical change, would be that new outdoor dining area, consistent with the theme we just talked about for the prior application. They're going to have a nice decorative pergola element there with a ability to have a retractable covered awning. And I know that Greg and his team are going to be putting a significant amount of money into that space in order to accomplish that. So
Before we go any further, I got it right the last time, and I got the order wrong this time. I forgot to open the public hearing. So is there a motion to open the public hearing on this?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Sorry about that. I was getting ahead of myself.
all right. I don't need to go through all that again, do I?
No.
Yes.
If he was the chairman, he'd make it do.
But again, Rosa Mexicano is restaurant that focuses on upscale Mexican cuisine. They have one location in Massachusetts currently, that being in the Seaport District. This would be only their second location in Massachusetts. They have a few other locations as well. But this is something that they're very much excited about. They're looking to open early February, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to try to resolve and move forward on the license issue with the board. And Greg, I don't know if you want to add anything that, I know technically it's a new hearing, but, you know, obviously we made this presentation a few weeks ago, but.
Oh, but maybe you could just introduce yourself again. You're on mute.
Muted.
Is that better?
Yes, it is.
I apologize. I was trying to go through the headphones. So first and foremost, I apologize for not being there this evening. Greg Sherman, Vice President of Operations for Rosa Mexicano. Going back, you know, I shared with you last time that I was fortunate enough to work in Burlington at the Paparazzi for about 8 years. And, you know, the only thing that's changed since the last time that I sat in that courtroom and tonight is I've had an opportunity to go inside that location a couple of times, meet with our design team and work a little bit more with Simon. And I can tell you that out of the 5 current projects we have going on, I am really, really lucky to live as close to the Burlington one as I do, because I'm really excited about what that finished product is going to look like. You know, as Rosa Mexicano, as I stated before, it's different. It's not Mexican food. It's different, special, and better. And we truly, you know, pride ourselves on being the best part of someone's day. We're excited to go back into Burlington. I thank you guys for your time. I apologize for not being there, but you know, the only thing that's changed since the last time I saw you and today is just a little bit more excitement now that I'm starting to see the project come, you know, full display.
Thank you. Although it's hard to tell, we can tell Mr. Vaughn is a little more excited as well. And it's still,
I'm excited.
He is.
I am.
All right, is that it from the applicant side?
Yeah, I know, John, I don't know if you wanted to, John Phipps with Simon, but since he is here, I just figured I'd mention that he's here. But so I think this is consistent with what we had talked about before, which is just that, you know, this will be with Rosa, I think, the 6th liquor license that has been utilized from the site-specific licenses that were approved. So obviously, there's intent to, you know, make use of those and move forward. And I think the mall is certainly becoming what I think many folks thought it would be in terms of that destination. And, you know, I think with Fogo opened, I actually was over there the other day, had an opportunity to walk through the space, thinking of an event through family that was planning something. So just phenomenal space. And I think it really speaks well of the town to have that diversification of restaurant and entertainment venues, which Rosa Mexicano will certainly add to it. So,
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. I will go to Mr. Morandi this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we had a beautiful subcommittee meeting this morning. Greg did a great job, Mark did a great job on it. We discussed everything that we needed to. We were very happy to get the license that we wanted to, and now we're just gonna fulfill our word about go ahead and going forward with this. So everything worked out great, and I believe this restaurant's gonna do very well in town. So.
Thank you, Mr. Morandi. Mr. Hogan, do you have anything further for the subcommittee?
No, just that I'm thrilled that they're going to be moving forward and have their February target date, and we're moving all towards that.
Hey, Greg, we hope you feel better. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Mr. Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up, Mark, on your comments, Fogo de Chao, several of us were at their opening event a couple of weeks ago as well, and it was very noticeable, actually, the improvements at the mall, particularly in that area of green space as promised. You know, I thought it was very attractive, and just wanted to say we're pleased with the renovations that I've seen so far that are taking place down at the Burlington Mall. Regarding the license, the only question I have is ordinarily, and this might be a question for staff, when we get to these alcohol licenses, there's usually several pages included in the backup material. We only have one page of the application plus some seating, some seating diagrams, but otherwise that's.
We had that from before,
I
though.
think that last time when we had the.
We got that from the
agenda,
previous
that
one.
Packet in there.
Okay.
I think the committee sort of indicated that, come back with the request for a different license.
Okay then. All right, I'm fine with that then.
Thank you, Mr. Runyon. Just to follow up on your statement that it's a destination, it's almost starting to look like Epcot down there with the variety of foods that the mall is offering. I think it's a great idea to offer, different types of food so that people can, get different experiences.
Well, I think that it's certainly, in the events of over the past year and a half now, have shown the struggles of retail in general, dry apparel retail and a lot of that. But I think that it's just accelerated the certain retail tenants that are no longer around. But, I think that, again, the intent here is to be able to provide a destination that will drive foot traffic, to be able to help those retailers, and dining and entertainment are certainly ones that are going to be all the more critical now to be able to, drive that when you see less retail that's out there. So,
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Okay, where this is a public hearing, anybody from the public that wants to just talk about this agenda item or discuss this?
This is John Phipps with Simon Property Group. I just wanted to also tell the board that Simon is very excited to have Rosa come to the mall. I have not been to the Rosa at the Seaport, but I have been to one in New York, and it is fabulous. It's a cut above, and so we are excited to include them in our offerings at the mall, and can't wait for them to get open.
Thank you, Mr. Phipps. Anything further from the public? All right, seeing nothing further.
Close public hearing.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded to close the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? 500, public hearing is closed. Mr. Runyon, I'll start with you. Any further discussion from the board?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody on this end?
I'm sorry.
Okay, that being the case.
So I'd make a motion to all alcohol special permit. You want to do all three of these separately, right?
Yes, please.
The vehicular's license and the legislation license.
I'm sorry, Attorney Mead, do we have to do all three?
I would do all three separately.
Okay. So I'll be looking for a motion to approve the all alcohol special legislation license.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500. I'll be looking for approval of the manager.
Make a motion of the manager's license.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? All right, 500. And I'll be looking for the approval for the victualer's license.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? 500.
great. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate Lynn, John, and Lisa also. Look forward to, continue to work with you all. So, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 294 is another public hearing. This is with regards to a grant location for 10 Meadow Road. Oh, okay. Thank you, Attorney Mead, for assisting us this evening.
My pleasure. It's great to see everyone.
Okay, I'll be looking for a motion to open the public hearing on this.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of opening the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, 500. Okay, do we have the applicant out there in WebEx?
Yes, good evening. This is James Watt. I work for Pike Telecom. I'm representing Karen Lebeck and Verizon tonight on this petition for a grant of location at Great Meadow Road. Verizon is petitioning for a grant of location to relocate one joint-owned pole, P43-12, on the northerly side of Great Meadow Road, approximately 12 feet northwesterly from its current location. The reason for the petition is to accommodate a new driveway for the Burlington DPW. I visited the site today. There are no double woods that are involved in this petition request. The pole is staked to be relocated in line with the existing pole line, so no additional guying and support is going to be necessary for this work request. There is cable TV that's occupying the pole. I'm not aware if a ticket has been submitted to them, but if they haven't been notified, I'll make sure that Verizon is aware that they need to provide the proper notification to complete the transfer to the new pole location when the time arises. And that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to
Thank
answer them.
you. We don't have a subcommittee on this one, so I'll start with Mr. Runyon.
No question.
Mr. Morandi.
No question.
Mr. Reed.
So, I know, when I open with a so, I gotta be a real pain in the keister. While we have you, Mr. Watt, I wanted to voice a concern that I keep hearing from residents and one of my own, which is the fact that we have a lot of crooked and double poles strewn about town. And it's becoming quite an eyesore. I'll be
It's subcommittee for you as well.
okay. So yeah, I mean, it's just, in the past 6 months, I've heard from 20 some odd residents, complaining about what it looks like. And I mean, I don't disagree with them. It looks awful, especially for a town such as Burlington, right? We laud ourselves as a great place to live and work and to come and enjoy yourselves for entertainment. But, you look at the poles and it looks like, something hit them from underground and they're all just kind of at odd angles, or, you've got half a pole, sister to another pole, up and down main roads. So until we can work out something, I would not be in favor of supporting the move of this pole, just because, it seems like we have to take something and make a thing of it to get any action done.
Duly noted. Yeah, I can definitely voice this concern to Verizon. They could probably compile a list of all the double poles and the poles that are scheduled to be replaced, and we can go from there, and maybe we can come to an agreement on if we start replacing some poles, if we start scheduling some, that maybe we can make this work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Mr. Hogan.
No, I'm okay.
Just to follow quickly what Mr. Treese brought up, the leaning poles will concern me the most, because if a leaning pole goes over, it's not the only that goes over. They're all tied to each other, and I've seen it happen numerous times. One comes down, several come down, and it can be an absolute nightmare, not only for the utilities, traffic-wise, and frustration-wise. So please, I would urge you to work with Verizon, have Verizon take a look at the tenuous poles and the double poles, and, it would benefit them as well. So that's enough on that. But where this is a public hearing, anybody from the public? Yes, Mr. McDonald? Yes. You need to come up here and address, identify yourself.
I'm gonna come up there later.
Just identify yourself for the board.
Yes, my name is Arthur McDonald. I've lived in Burlington for 53 years. Talking about public poles, I feel I can give some credence to it. I spent the first 4 years in the military hanging poles, climbing poles. And we learned on poles, if you took a screwdriver and you put it in the pole and it went in more than an inch, that pole was rotten. I lost about 4 soldiers because of poles that collapsed. Right? And it's rather disconcerting to see them put a piece of metal around a pole. I watched a couple of them being done. No one tested the pole with a screwdriver, they just wrapped the pole. I had a brand new pole in my backyard less than 2 years, and it fell across just as we moved all 3 cars out of the driveway in the morning, the pole, brand new pole, it fell down because the pole wasn't treated properly. So the problem is, why all of a sudden are they putting all these steel, they're not even steel, they're putting a metal girder, I guess you call it, a girdle. But you don't know how safe it is. And you get all these poles in town that are bending over, but there's no metal on those, which tells me, although it doesn't look safe, it's a lot safer than the poles that they're putting metal around, because those poles, they suspect has something wrong. And I suspect that the pole wasn't treated properly when it was first installed, because those poles are good for 25, 30, 40 years. And I think I put in about 400 of them when I was stationed in Germany. So I think you should look into it more.
All right.
I mean, that's my only thing.
I appreciate it, Arthur.
If you have a storm, you could lose a lot of poles.
Which we're gonna get a storm over the next couple of days.
Yeah.
Mr. Denizio, can we reach out to, I think it's engineering, to see if there's anything we can do on our end to address this issue, have them reach out to Verizon? I know the poles are co-located, but Verizon maintains the poles in Burlington. Maybe we can just start like a master plan on poles or something, but.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, to add to that, to Mr. McDonald's point, maybe we could understand the intent behind the metal girdles, as you call them, and you know, what their, you know, purpose is.
I'll tell you at subcommittee.
Okay.
Mike already knows.
Mr. Ryan, did you want to mention something on?
Subcommittee.
Oh, okay, very good. I'll set on that. Anybody else from the public want to talk about the grant the location for 10 Great Meadow Road? All right, nothing? All right, that being said, I'll be looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained. All right,
Make a motion to pass, approve 10 Meadow Road.
do I have a second?
Regulation.
Second.
Moving to second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, yeah.
Abstained, 4-1-0.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Arthur.
I'm here to invoke citizens' time.
Okay, we'll just have a seat up right close by, and we'll be there short. Actually, just stay, you can just stay there.
Okay.
We have a couple more, and then we'll be heading
Okay,
that direction.
sorry, I thought it was through.
All right, item 295, Town Center presentation. Melissa Kontakis, our Economic Development Officer.
Good evening. Thank you for accommodating me on the online version here. This item, my name.
Wait a minute, did we take a vote giving you permission to do that?
You gotta think about it.
I know.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Melissa Tintopoulos, the Economic Development Director for the town. And this item is kind of going with the theme of some of our work over the weekend, which was, based on the placemaking, but really trying to think of our town center and reimagining the possibilities. So in the short term, we've been working really with what we've got. We've, started to look at how we can enhance the existing space. But I was fortunate to connect with Chris Culture, thank you, from MAPC, and he had been doing research and work throughout Massachusetts and the Boston metro area in particular about retrofitting suburbia and looking at these kind of areas similar to Burlington, which are kind of characterized by that mid-century strip shopping development that came, kind of in the middle of the 20th century, and looking how we can maybe reimagine that. So with that, we wanted to share with you some of the studies and how this could be a stepping stone as we look to the future for the town center. Chris?
Okay. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for having me. So my name's Chris Kuschel. I work for MAPC. Just want to thank Melissa for setting this up tonight. This is actually, I think this is my first project actually working with the town of Burlington. So this has been fun. But I grew up in North Woburn, right over the border. So I'm very familiar with the area. And this was, whatever, let's see, full screen for you. So this is sort of a small project where, again, we're kind of examining Burlington Center and just kind of thinking about what the potential opportunities are. We had a great roundtable discussion virtually with a number of the local landowners in this area a few months ago. And so a lot of these slides kind of borrow from that. And the intent was really to spark a conversation and to lay out what maybe could be some next steps if the town wishes. So I have a number of slides, but I'll go through them quite quickly. especially given the time. And if you don't already have these slides, we can send them to you and you can look at them more closely, or we can get into some details during the discussion. So I'll touch on why we care about this area. One framework for what a revitalized center sort of might contain, what those elements are, what some potential principles could be for thinking about the future, and then finally what some of the next steps might be to try and achieve that future. Okay, so why are we thinking about this area? So from a kind of a zoomed out view, a regional perspective, just in a nutshell, the main reason is communities are thinking about how to guide their future growth with a notion that the way that they've grown in the past maybe doesn't work quite that well for thinking about the needs of the future. And really just as we know, and as I'm sure probably many of you know, we especially have such a high demand for housing, and it's a real sort of thorny issue, and sort of how do we accommodate that huge demand. And one of the ways, in many cases, and what I've written here is that the future is the past. So it's looking to the past, and there's this concept of traditional neighborhood development. And so really, it's sort of taking the principles of your classic New England village and applying them sort of to today's lifestyle. And by that, I mean, we're thinking about a walkable, mixed-use neighborhood, while still, understanding that many of these suburbs that either don't have transit or just don't have much transit, we also have to make accommodations for vehicles, of course. So, as Melissa said, I've been working on some research in this sort of broad framework called Retrofitting the Suburbs, specifically looking at shopping centers like strip malls. And we have this, I think, pretty innovative research that we'll be hopefully releasing in next month or so. And this screenshot just shows kind of an early iteration where we're doing this analysis where we're systematically identifying where all the strip malls are in our entire region, but then taking it and thinking through, well, how much development could be accommodated on these sites? And more importantly, which are the best sites to do so? And we have a kind of rigorous kind of modeling method for achieving that. But more specifically for Burlington, your recent master plan includes a focus on the town center, as well as other goals where I think the town center can come into play. So for Burlington Center, there was a recommendation about evaluating the area and updating the zoning to help facilitate the desired types of development you would want in the future. And related to that was thinking about design guidelines to sort of support a walkable mixed-use development. You have other elements such as transportation with recommendations towards encouraging and supporting multimodal transportation, as well as housing. And specifically, you had a goal to expand the range of housing options in Burlington to serve a variety of different types of users and within different economic conditions. And again, I think this is where Burlington Center could potentially help play maybe a role in that. And then finally, your recent LRRP focuses on the town center, and that document has a whole number of recommendations ranging from complete streets to marketing and signage and wayfinding. So there's already a lot of recommendations to look at this area. This is one framework about how we could think about what kind of will contribute to a long-term revitalized Burlington Center. So I have three elements here. First is the roadways. So generally speaking, the character of the roadway itself should follow what the desired land use of that area, of the adjacent private development is. Within a town center, the general principle is that we don't want the roadways to sort of overwhelm the feeling of being in that area. A second piece is the placemaking. I believe Melissa's giving you some updates on all of her great activities in this area. I know there was a big event over this past weekend. I believe it had around 500 people attend. And so this placemaking it's great from a near-term perspective. It helps create a sense of place and can help start to create an identity for an area. And then the final piece that I would argue is probably the most critical piece is the private development. I think the urban design, and by that I don't mean the specific architecture, but the way that buildings are sited on a parcel, the location of parking, those aspects, as well as the types of uses that are on a site, really are critical features to the success of a town center. So I'll just quickly delve into these just a little bit more. In terms of roadways, at a minimum, roadways should have complete streets. And by that means it's safe for everybody to get around through a variety of means of travel. Within this specific location, I think we also, though, have to balance that with the fact that this is a high throughput road. I looked online, it looked like there's around 11,000 vehicles per day that travel along this roadway, this area. That being said, I think there are often opportunities to have certain nodes where the traffic, where the sort of prioritization is flipped from a vehicle to a pedestrian. And there are examples in the state where this has been done. One example is in Route 109 down in Millis, where for this one area, they've kind of helped prioritize pedestrians and traffic has been calmed. So I'm trying to change the slide here. Okay, placemaking, again, I don't want to belabor this because I think you've heard quite a bit about this, but I think I would just leave you with, on its own, it's a great strategy and I think it's really exciting, but combined with some of these other elements, I think it can really help set the stage for some transformative change over the long term. So then the final one then is to talk about the private development. And so what I'm laying out here are some, again, these are principles. These are not intended to, they're intended to spark a conversation. They're not intended to be sort of the answer. But it was, again, one way to help guide the conversation that we had with the landowners. And so I was looking at this from two scales. One is at the district scale. So this is an aerial of Burlington Center. I've then abstracted that into this diagram to just for ease of understanding the area and the principles. So running through the principles, one of the things that you might consider is starting to establish a block structure. So these lines right now show where you actually have existing rights of way. So you sort of already kind of have your bones today. And then that can be combined with, especially in your larger private development parcels, kind of helping to formalize and create, even within private development, this block structure. And these blocks are important. These are kind of considered a key component for walkability. And when I say walkability, I don't just mean is it safe to walk around, but do people actually want to walk around? And this is one of those ways to help achieve that. So that's talking about how you walk when you are within the site. The other important aspect is getting to the site. And again, doing so in as many kind of modes of travel as possible, hopefully not only by cars. I'm sure biking is the lowest sort of mode of transportation today, but it's also generally the fastest growing. And I think when it's safe to do so, there's a great potential for people to cover fairly large distances in a fairly quick time frame to get to this area. And so that, along with pedestrian improvements.
So if I can interrupt real quick.
Yes, sir.
We have your whole presentation in a printed form and downloaded on our computers. So we pretty much have that presentation.
Oh, okay.
So
what would you prefer?
Well, I want to open it to the members of the board right now to see if they have comments or questions. I'll start at this end with Mike Runyon. Mr. Runyon?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, these are all things that we all know and we've been talking about here in Burlington for decades, really. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see now on paper and digitally on our computers, so on and so forth, pieces of this coming together. I don't think anything expects big changes to happen overnight. but, you know, taking these little steps, you know, to make the changes down there that we think that the people of Burlington desire is just great. I mean, and I'm sure someone's going to be talking about during subcommittee, you know, the success of the pocket park over the weekend.
Well, Mike,
All the activity going down.
I was gonna ask if we could do,
as well.
if we could talk about that while we still have Melissa here. So, but.
No, it's not my subcommittee report.
No, I know.
I figured somebody.
I think all of us want to say something about that. I know I do. So anyway, I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to.
That's fine. You know, I just wanted to recognize the efforts that we've seen in the last year and a half or so to address some of these nagging issues around town here. So thank you all for your efforts.
Morini?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this presentation is very, very nice. It goes on stuff that the town has been looking to do. I think that moving a little bit forward to the pocket park that we had, Melissa, you talked to Michael, who was a big asset to you to help out with that pocket park. And I think that's the first component of this whole piece that you're trying to, we're looking at now. No matter how much we look at it, how much we think that the roadways and squaring off and doing it, we don't own that land. So that's something that the landowner has to be willing to step in and help out with too. And you've already got that connection. And may I also say that you did a phenomenal job with the park. The pocket park turned out great. I think everybody enjoyed it. So kudos to you on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Morini. Mr. Priest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Chris, Melissa, thank you for the presentation. You know, I think what Joe and Mike are saying is dead on. But what I like about this presentation, what I like about this plan, which obviously the pocket park is already showing some of the movement of, right? Because how do we break the whole chicken egg cycle of, you know, getting people to a space that isn't easy to get around? You know, is focusing down on, and the couple of big takeaways I took from this presentation was, you know, the need to create more connectivity, the need for more access toward transportation, and, you know, something that might not seem as critical, but I think, you know, is this notion of wayfinding and being able to move around the space and easily know from a distance where you are and where you want to go. You know, I think that, to Mike's point, this is absolutely something we've been talking about for a long time. And it's great to not just see the presentation, but to see bits and pieces of the action already beginning. And to that point, I'm happy to take this out of my subcommittee and talk about it now. The pocket park was, in my opinion, a huge success from the perspective of attendance. You know, my wife and I were there for about 3 hours, and it didn't seem like a dip below what felt like 100 people. You know, people coming and going, people staying. Some people I knew, some people I didn't. People brought their dogs, brought their kids. You know, it was just, it felt great. And, you know, somebody pointed out to me on the day, you know, this isn't an event that we're, you know, showing up to like Burlington Day or Truck Day. This is just people getting together, you know, at a cool, novel, you know, spot, you know, to have a drink and talk, which was really, really neat. Obviously for me, in terms of success metrics, I'd love to know, you know, what the outcome was for the local businesses. You know, if they saw an uptick in foot traffic, it seemed like people were frequenting the businesses up and down that strip, which was great to see. That's obviously anecdotal, so any kind of numbers that we can put around that would be great. You know, but obviously, you know, Melissa, thank you for everything that you did to make that a success, because in my opinion, it absolutely was. And I think that, you know, in terms of moving the needle around the whole chicken and egg problem, it definitely proved that we can find unique, innovative ways to bring people to that area, and, you know, create more connectivity. So thank you, Melissa. Chris, thank you for the presentation, and I'll stop talking.
Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For looking at the view from about, I don't know, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, things look a lot more interesting. And for the folks who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just going to hold this up for a second. It's an aerial view of the center, and just looking at that, it's you know, we've imagined a lot of things and how that could look.
over time. And it's important that we have the private-public partnership to kind of make some of these things happen, because from this view, you know, there's a lot of things we could do, we being the town collectively in the town and the private sector. You know, that scar in the middle there that the state owns that we've never been able to buy from them. We could do so many wonderful things with that. And, you know, from this view, it makes you optimistic that if we can put some things together and do the little steps, this would start to change
Long after the five of us are off this board, but, you know, it has to start, and Melissa did a great job starting that the other day, so that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Again, just to probably echo what some of the other members said, we've been talking about this for years. Now we're starting to see it. We're starting to see it on paper, starting to see the dream come true, so to speak. And the first, I heard several people say that the Pocket Park was the first step in this direction, which I agree. It's, you know, we talk about it, let's just start changing the center, let's start doing things. And Melissa did. She got it, that Pocket Park going. And my observation through the day is that crowds kept growing and growing, and it was a huge success in my opinion. I had one woman say to me that there are faces here that I know and faces here that I don't. And I said, that's the whole idea, is to bring everybody together, see what we really have downtown, and get to know each other. So that's, you know, a byproduct of having this Pocket Park. But Melissa, I can't thank you enough for organizing that. And based on what I saw, what I heard, I can only just imagine the next one being more successful, bigger, and even better. So thank you for organizing that. Chris, thank you for the presentation.
Chairman Tigas, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So thank you for the kind words of support. It definitely takes a team to make you know, the placemaking happen, and it was a great collaboration with, you know, our departments and with the property owner and the businesses. So I think that's helping us do exactly what we anticipated in terms of it being a catalyst for more imagination, more you know, kind of activation of the town center. And we're doing a debrief on that particular, you know, event tomorrow. I think where it dovetails with Chris's work in the MAPC is that, you know, that is a component of, you know, some of the other implementation steps that we will need to take, including, you know, being a little more proactive about, you know, doing our 3A design, you know, road work improvement. As some of you know, that in this slide presentation as well, there's a mention that MassDOT's working on doing some initial improvements through a repave job. But what we'd like to see is leveraging that into an overhaul for the 3A project, because then that roadway work, as Chris mentioned, will set the stage to help us unlock future development for the land uses in that in the town center. And then through the zoning, we can consider incorporating that mix of uses to keep that kind of vibrancy that we're looking from and that we're getting from in that placemaking project from the weekend.
Thank you, Melissa. Anything further on this? All right, well, thank you both for being here tonight, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, next item on the agenda, 296 is a plaque for the Town Common, the Rotary Park section. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For those of you who remember, prior to the pandemic, we had a ceremony over in the Rotary Park section of the Common honoring Kevin O'Neill. Kevin O'Neill is a Special Olympian who won a gold medal many years ago in the Special Olympics, and no one ever acknowledged it. So the family and I spoke, and we decided to do something. And I was a member of Rotary at the time, and Rotary stepped forward and said they would pay for the marker, and they'd like to put it in the park area that they spent a great deal of money on over there. And we're going to put it in the ground now, finally, for the first time. And as we're looking through it, we couldn't find, and we assumed we just forgot to make a motion and vote on getting permission to do that. And I'd like to do that tonight. So I'd like to make a motion to give us permission to put I don't even know, 10-inch, 20-inch, I can't remember, marker in the ground over at the Rotary Park area for Kevin O'Neill, who was awarded a gold medal. And he participated in a couple of other events at the Special Olympics. With great honor and respect from us to him and his family.
Thank you. Is there a second to Mr. Hogan's motion? Okay, moving to second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 5-0-0.
Thank you.
On to the minutes. Can we vote them all as one?
I would say so.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the Alcohol Subcommittee meetings of May 12th, 2021, June 9th, 2021, and July 12th, 2021?
I'll make second.
Okay, moved and second, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, 5-0-0. Subcommittee reports, Mr. Runyon.
I knew you were gonna, for some reason, I knew you were gonna start with me, Jim. Let me start, I have a couple of items. Let me start with, given the, season, I wanted to talk about this for a while now. The restoration of, headstones that, has been ongoing for a couple of years over at the old burial ground, diagonal from where we are here tonight. The Historical Commission has contracted with a gentleman, interesting guy. Not everybody is, well versed in restoring 200-year-old headstones, but Mr. Bob Sarabian is. He's been out there for 2 seasons, like I said. You may have seen him out there with his tripod and digging holes and so forth, and whatnot out there. But he does an outstanding job. I walked through there a few months ago to look at some of the work he did. And he's really done an amazing job over there. And he'll be out there for the next 2 or 3 seasons and get them all looking good. Actually, BCAT did a piece on this recently, and if you have a chance, it's just a 3 or 4 minute piece on BCAT. It was, I think you'll find it interesting. But anyhow, kudos to the Historical Commission and Mr. Sarabian. He does an outstanding job. He really does. So the second item, the Verizon items I alluded to earlier here. Joe and I were summoned to a subcommittee meeting with Tom Hayes, John Sanchez, representatives from Verizon and the subcontractor that's been in town. We've all seen them in town. We've all seen the poles around town here with the brown paint on them, and some of them with those support anchors that are in the ground. They are here because they are required to be here by under the terms of the Federal Communication Act to examine all the poles. They're going to be in every city and town in Massachusetts, in fact, in New England. They have to do this. They have to test every single pole for rot, as Mr. McDonald alluded to. The ones that determined to have a certain percentage of life existence to them will remain. The others that are identified for replacement are going to be replaced. And that, unfortunately, is going to result in a lot more double poles here in Burlington. Now, the reason, first of all, for the Mr. Sanchez calling for the meeting was, we have some vital infrastructure underground near a lot of these poles, and Mr. Sanchez was very unhappy with the lack of communication that DPW was having with Verizon as well as the subcontractor. I think we made some good progress during that meeting. We've gotten some additional contact information from the people that were there. We've got they actually have a government affairs person in Verizon who will be reaching out to for additional conversations. But the double pole situation, I brought it up during that committee meeting, and unfortunately, it's going to be the case, and there's going to be a lot of them. And it's very difficult, at least this is the story we continually get from Verizon, is there are so many people on those poles, and everyone has to play ball. Whether it's RCN, it's Verizon, it's Edison, it's numerous cable, internet people, folks, everything that's on those things now, and it takes a long time. So this is not the last we're going to hear from residents around town regarding double poles, and for that matter, if they were poking around in your yard and they left a mess behind, as we sent them out to look at someone's property in Burlington that had called Joe because of it. They seemed to me, Joe, that they were pretty responsive. They were going to get right out there and take care of it.
And they did.
And did they? So that's good to hear.
I got a call the next day,
so
I was taken care of the next day.
So we're going to have more discussions on this. Hopefully, some of the new contact people that we have will be able to guide us through this process. But it's going to take some time, and it's going to, hopefully, I'm hoping I don't have a double pole in front of my house, and I'm sure none of you want them either. But they're a fact of life, and we're going to have to be dealing with them for a little while. The good news is they're out there trying to identify poles that are in need of being replaced.
Mr. Chairman.
More to come on that.
Just to follow up on that, I don't know if any of you remember when Wayside was being developed and built. We had in this room representatives from every single company, and we filled the room, who had something to do on all those poles. And half of them wouldn't talk to the others. Mm-hmm. They couldn't schedule anything because, for chaos reasons. And it just went on and on and on for a while, and it took a long time to finally get everything in place to get the poles and get the lines underground and connected. It was just unbelievable, the communication or lack of communication with all of these different companies. And to see just that block, that Wayside, what it took to do something all around town, I can't even imagine what they would.
It's frustrating, when DPW's out there repaving streets and doing their sidewalks and stuff. And there's two poles there. A year or two later, they finally come and take out that, well, now you got a big hole in the sidewalk. And, I've seen people trying to navigate their strollers around those damn things. And I don't have an answer for you, but.
No, but you get some information.
But we have some additional contact information. And Mr. Sanchez was very firm with these folks in attendance that, they better play ball, or we'll bring this thing to a halt. And
well, that's what it came down to, the Wayside thing. Bob Mercier was the town administrator back then, and that's what he did. He put his foot down. He says, "All right, enough. If you want cooperation from us in the future, you got to start cooperating with us today."
Yeah. So it's been a headache for forever, and it's going to continue to be a headache. Just want to give you a little heads up. Yeah, double pole.
Second, I have to go through the board. That it, Michael?
That's it. Thank you.
Nothing.
Nothing? Displeased?
There was, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were. There was something you were going to add, but you can take it from me about the police department.
Oh, I'll talk about that. All right. Are you all set with your, Mr. Priest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quickly on the polls thing, if they have government affairs people, hopefully we can have more open conversations, get them talking to each other. But we'll see. In any case, a couple quick things. Sculpture Park is having their event on November 6th. If you can come out, they've got the Red Trousers doing some juggling and some activities. They got, I believe, the select chorus is going to be there from Burlington High School. It should be a good time. So I suggest folks, if you can, get out there. We talked about the Pocket Park, but I believe Saturday was the first of hopefully many pop-up events like that we can do moving forward. And I just want to again thank Melissa, obviously, Tentacles, for everything that she had done, as well as Mike Murray and the Murray family, for everything with the public-private partnership and making that happen. Transportation Committee is having its first meeting on Wednesday, this Wednesday, 27th, at 6:30. Our new DEI committee is having their first meeting on 7:30, same day, so 10/27. On that, the new DEI director for the schools had a forum, a diversity forum on the 20th of this month called Let's Talk About It. I believe that they'll be airing on BCAT if I'm not mistaken. Rich is nodding, so I'm taking that as an affirmative. And then lastly, I just want to say, this is the last chance that we're going to talk before it. Halloween safety. Kids and parents alike, be safe out there. Have flashlights, have, neon glow sticks or reflective wear, be safe on the streets, but have a good time. And that's all. Thank you.
I got a couple of things just to follow up with double polls. What may be an impetus for Verizon to address that issue is it's a byproduct of the small cells policy we have, that they're not allowed to install any small cells on a double pole. So everybody's, we know small cells are coming to the town, but if they have all these double poles, they're not gonna be able to utilize them. So that may be a driving factor for them to,
Amazing how that works sometimes.
it is.
Benefit,
So that may be an impetus for them to go faster. The other thing I want to mention is we're going to be forming a committee at the request of the Historical Commission. The actual term is the semi-quincentennial anniversary of our country. I think we could probably come up with a better name for a committee. But we will be forming a committee to acknowledge and celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country.
Here's the name right there. The 250th
There you
anniversary.
go. All right, well, kill two birds with one stone. But we will, again, I promised Mr. Capola we would be putting that committee together and getting it going, so.
You need to get a lot of people involved in that.
Yeah.
The bicentennial was unbelievable, but it took an unbelievable.
Who better experience than you, Bob? Thanks for signing up. No.
Actually, Jim, the gentleman we appointed to ZBA today had in college history.
I think he was still with us, but he just must have got off. Well, if he wants to get more involved. All right, there's two people for the committee. I'm wearing purple because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I was honored to speak at a 5K fundraiser for Saheli, which is a Southeast Asian group that does the follow-up for domestic violence victims, and it's a group you'd never hear of, but if you hear of them, it's because you need help. And they do some tremendous work in this town. They had a very successful 5K. They had a lot of walkers and runners, and I'm just hoping that it'll expand next year. They had great weather for it. And my last, we're supposed to be getting some very heavy rain and winds over the next couple of days. There's a lot of trees, and we know where they go, catch basins. So just to have the residents, if you see a catch basin that you can clear, would be appreciated. If you can't, just call DPW and make them aware of the situation. And the last item is, we had another issue at the police station, a detached AC system that is intended, the only purpose is to keep the server room cool, failed. And luckily, we had an officer that noticed this, and it was cool out, and it wasn't raining, so that officer propped open some windows to keep the system from overheating. Had it been during those hot days, an open window would not have helped. Had it been raining, that would not have helped, so fortunately, we had someone at the right place at the right time.
Are you trying to say we need a new station?
I think that just, again, unfortunately,
You're very subtle about it.
it's just another example of what's going on. People want to buy duct tape or whatever they want to do. Oh, I'll do this, but you know what? It's not just that. It's the building as a whole. It was built in the 1800s. And I'll just start with that.
Mr. Chairman, could we have a regular agenda item on police department?
Well, I'm a little bit passionate about that.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, Arthur will get to you in a second. You do have something?
I did.
Okay, Joe has woken up and, what do you have, Joe?
I did. I would like to put on something on the agenda for next month, is that block the
That's-
box.
That's right, you wanted to have a discussion about,
I wanted to have a discussion tonight about it, but apparently the agenda was too long and we didn't have time to fit it in. So I really like, and I'll put it up for discussion, I'd like to put it up for approval. If it's gonna be approved or denied, that night, one shot at it. So it's in front of the schools, Memorial and Marshall Simons, it's block the box. I'm getting all kinds of calls from different people, and the bus drivers can't get out, the people can't get in, I did have a meeting with Mr. Hayes on a whole plan that's coming up, but to start it off, I think block the box would be a good idea, to just let the traffic flow.
They put one on Wilmington Road. Could you ask him if they've done any follow-up study to see how the public responded to it?
in Middlesex and Wheeler too.
In
And that one there, I've actually seen, is definitely working.
Yeah.
Definitely works, I know that.
So that was my
Okay.
subcommittee.
Mr. Denizio, Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you. Mine is shorter now because everybody hit on the stuff I was gonna talk about. Halloween Beer Garden. Talking about the police station was timely. I know that it was brought up at the meeting before town meeting, and then at the last meeting, a reminder. I sent out something today for you to look at. It wasn't an agenda item, but I thought I would just talk briefly about it. Obviously, we'll need to talk about that at some point, maybe at one of our strategics or something like that. But it was sort of just a back of the envelope, calculation of working from when it is on the debt plan backwards, and then the discussion will be, does that where it belongs on the debt plan, or does it need to be an adjustment? And if so, what does that mean for the debt plan and the budget? So that just went out today. I have some time to read it.
And do we have an idea about a strategic planning before the holidays or after?
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
holidays?
have one before, Mr. Talking, John.
We'll have one before.
Okay.
And then my only other thing was just to let you know that Mr. Sanchez will be here, was planned to be here on the 8th to just update you on the PFAS project, where we are, where we're going. And he'll also get a chance to announce some grants that they've received since last time he was here. I don't want to steal his thunder.
Can we, while we have him here, can you have him give us an update on MWRA project? Thank you. All right, any old business or new business? Citizens' time, Arthur.
Thank you very much. I've appeared before the select board on a number of occasions, and it usually isn't a positive situation, and unfortunately, it's not going to change now. Give you a little background. I have a 58-year-old niece in Aurora, Colorado, who got involved in an accident in 1988. She ended up 9 months in the hospital. She broke her back. She ended up with a morphine drip in her stomach, which she's had for over 30 years. And she has an ambulance bill of $97,000. Now that sort of hits me at home. They take $170 out of her disability check of $950. It doesn't leave her too much to live on. Now, getting to my issue, and I have copies for everybody of what I'm going to propose. On July 20th, my wife called for an ambulance to take me to Leahy. I had dehydrated because of a blood clot in my leg. Ambulance came, did an excellent job. Could never find fault with the fire department in this town. Excellent. 2 months later, I got what supposedly is a bill from Armstrong. Now, when you get a bill from anybody, it's an invoice that has a double page to it. There's a portion that you cut off and you send with your check, and then there's a portion that you retain as your copy. This was just a piece of paper. It was not an invoice. We met $500 for ambulance service. Now, I thought it was for Armstrong, and I know Armstrong didn't show up. So I wrote a very uncomplimentary remark on the so-called invoice, and I sent it back to Armstrong. 2 weeks later, Armstrong called me and said that there was no need for me to pay the bill because the town had forgiven the bill. I went to Armstrong about a week or so later, and I asked for a copy of the invoice, which I'll give to you. This is everything I'm talking about now. I have copies for all of you. After speaking to two neighbors who used the ambulance repeatedly, in fact, one of them had one last night, and there's a retired police officer next door to me, talked to both of them. They get ambulances 3 to 5 times a year. Never got a bill. I have two friends that had heart attacks, one in the middle of the street and one in the parking lot down here. Ambulances showed up, they never got a bill. I get a bill for $500. All right. I went to Armstrong and I asked for a copy of the bill, and they said, oh, the town has given you credit. The bill was actually $2,096.16. Now, I'm a taxpayer. Like everybody else in town, I paid for those ambulances and I paid for the service, and it's damn good. Armstrong said they no longer provide the service for to Burlington. They're only a collection agency for the town of Burlington. So I did a little research on collection agencies. This has to do with taxes. In the event the local tax collector chooses to utilize the services of a collection agency or company, no such agreement shall be entered into unless proposals for the same have been invited by public notice, published at least one newspaper or local circulation for 2 consecutive weeks, et cetera, et cetera. These are the administrative laws for the state of Massachusetts. All right. Now, I tried to get these answers from a number of clerical people in town hall. I didn't get any answers at all. That's why I'm here. All right? Here's my questions. Who authorized Armstrong to collect for ambulance service for the town of Burlington? In 2020, there were 1,860 calls for ambulances in this town. If everyone got a bill for $2,000, that's a $5 million collection that Armstrong would be using for the town of Burlington. Second, there's no entry in the town report on any revenue being collected by the town of Burlington. Now, I know that's a legal problem because you've got to identify all revenue coming into the town. It's not in the book. Now, if there's anything short of $1 million, okay, but when you add it up, if everyone paid for an ambulance, it was almost $5 million that should have been collected. In some manner or form, there should be an entry in the annual report saying there was revenue collected. The town cannot block out anything, and you know that better than I do. Town collects revenue in any form, it's got to appear in an annual report. Because it's got to be explained on when it's spent again, okay? The next question is, who determines the fees for ambulance service? Now, there was an article in the Globe in Boston. It's horrendous. Ambulance service can charge anything they want. And as my niece in Colorado found out, she owes thousands of dollars, and they take $170 out of a disability check of less than $1,000 that she gets every month, and she lives with it. Now my question is, how many people in Burlington get a bill from Armstrong for the town of Burlington and pay the bill? If they do, in my mind, that's illegal. You can't bill some people and not others. You provide the same service to everybody. The ambulance should be free. Right. Next question is, and I'm going to give you all this, who determines the fee for ambulance service? Someone's got to do it if you're going to charge citizens for Burlington. I can see people outside the town using the ambulance, accidents on the highway and the like. And you can collect because they aren't a taxpayer in Burlington. You have a right to collect fees for non-residents who use your ambulance service. Right. But my question still is, who determines who will be charged for ambulance service and what will the fee be? And how does Armstrong get the billing service for Burlington without a request for bid to collect the fee? Right. Now, when I came here for the last week, no one could really answer my questions. I went to 3 different offices, and granted, they're only clerical people. They didn't know. They didn't know who determines if Armstrong going to show up, and they don't show up anymore. So who determined that Armstrong has a right to collect fees? Now, I don't expect an answer from you today. But the bottom line is I will be at the next select board meeting. I would like answers. But if enough people call me and complain, we'll probably go to court.
All right, is that it? I was gonna ask Mr. Denizio if he has any answers at all to any of those.
Well, sure, I mean, these are copies.
Let's not do it tonight, but John Denizio is the guy who's going to get you all those answers.
Oh, that's fine, but these are copies for the selectmen. Okay, and I appreciate that.
So if the two of you figure out a way to get in touch with each other and have this conversation, because those questions have answers, Arthur.
Well, I hope so, because when I get billed and other people don't, that's something strange. I'm not saying others haven't gotten billed. In fact, my friend who died 5 years ago got a $1,700 bill from the town of Burlington. He didn't pay it. And I wouldn't pay it. And a lot of people, that's what comes out. You shouldn't pay it, but you shouldn't be billed. It's a two-way street. Because you're gonna catch elderly people who get fearful of bills and they pay them. And that's what my concern is. I've been an advocate for the deaf for years, and I find the same problem, especially deaf people. They get scared of authority.
Arthur, we're gonna take all your questions and try to answer them as best we can.
I'll be happy to spend any time with you I can. You weren't in when I was here.
Yeah, I wish I had seen you that day. We probably.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I appreciate the time. It's a concern.
Thank you for coming out, Arthur. Is there anybody else for citizens' time out there on the WebEx?
Don't see anybody.
Don't see anybody? John, anything?
Request to post a presentation from Chris and,
I'd like a statement on the poll situation. It's just a recommendation. Get an engineering certification beyond Verizon on what they're using to protect the poles. Because if the poles start coming down,
What was that term?
get an engineer. It's like getting an architectural certification. I had to do that when I was getting building permits because the building inspector wouldn't accept the structural features I put on my. So I got an architectural certification. You should be able to get an independent engineering certification on Verizon using that structure. So much so that if the certification isn't correct, you can sue them. But that protects the town, because you don't know what Verizon is doing. That's,
Mr. Denizio, nobody from?
Thank you.
Thank you.
there was one request to please make this an agenda item for next week. There should be answers to these questions. I'm guessing the ambulance.
Okay. All right.
But you'll get with Arthur beforehand.
Yep.
All right, anything else? Anything further from the board?
No further,
Okay.
make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is it seconded?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstained, meeting adjourned.